What's up guys, this is Josh here from Blender Bros, and today we're going to be modeling this industrial design that I found on Pinterest. Now the reason I want to model this one is because it's a little bit tricky. It requires an inset boolean, it requires a little bit of retopology, and it also requires very specific sub-D topology management. It's easy to make, but it can be tricky, especially if you're a beginner, so I'm going to show you how to do it. Before we get started, if you're brand new to Blender, brand new to hard surface modeling, this tutorial might be a bit too advanced for you. I would really recommend grabbing our accelerator program in the link in the description. This is where you're going to learn our entire hard surface modeling workflow in under 2 weeks. That is a guarantee. You can see all of our student results here, and you can see even more results on the link in the description on that page. So if you want to learn Blender, specifically hard surface modeling within the next 2 weeks, check out that link in the description below. Let's get started. So I'm going to overlay the images here on the screen by my video editor just because it's going to be easier than actually importing the images here into Blender. I have a second monitor, so I'm going to work and look at those manually. So the first thing we want to do is we want to look at the overall shape, and it's very obvious this is a cylindrical shape. So the first thing I want to do is add in a cylinder. You don't want to like think 20 steps ahead. Well, sometimes you do. I won't get into that though. But in general, you want to think like, what's the first thing I can do to get one step closer to the shape? That's how I think. So I'm going to add in the cylinder. We're going to do 16 vertices because I'm going to be using a sub-D workflow. It's going to be higher resolution when we run the sub-D. So lower vertex count here. I'm going to scale this by maybe 2 or maybe 2.2 could be even better. Then I'm just going to press Control A to apply the scale. And I'm going to right click to shade auto smooth. As a matter of fact, I'll just leave it flat for now. And what I want to do here is just add in some loops. So Control R until you have roughly a square shape, kind of like that. Just all these need to be square more or less. And then what I want to do is I want to use something called a lattice. Now I'm going to show you how this works. We're going to press Shift A. We're going to add in a lattice right here. I'm going to scale this up a bit until it's inside the cylinder, and then I'm going to scale this even more. And on this lattice here, the first thing I want to do is increase the UVW resolution. This is the same as XYZ. So X is U, Y is V, Z is W. It's just to kind of differentiate. It doesn't really matter though. We're going to scale this up by maybe 1 segment there. I could even do 2 more. And then we're going to do the same thing on the V. I'm just going to do 1 because again, I want to keep this square or it's going to be an issue. And then we're going to do 1 more on the U. So we basically have a square shaped lattice. Don't do rectangles, go like this. So now what I want to do is I want to take this cylinder, I want to give this a deform lattice, and I want to choose the object lattice. So that way when I move the lattice, it'll also move the object here. So basically what I want to do is I want to take these vertices here. I want to move this out a bit. I'm just trying to follow the shape more or less. Let me actually start on this side so it's easier. This will be the side view. So I'm just going to kind of move, whoops, let me select the right one. I'm just going to kind of move this out a bit. And then I'm going to take these 3, I'm going to move these out a bit more. And then I'm going to take this one and move this out a bit more. And that's going to give us the general curvature that we need for that particular shape. I'm going to do the same thing over here, but a little bit less. So I'm going to go G and then X, G and then X, and then G and then X. I don't want this to be like super far out. I could probably go a bit more than this. So just kind of move that out a bit. And now we're going to have like a rough shape, and I can actually go in here and I can add in a mirror modifier. Now I'm going to be using HardOps because it's a way quicker. It's a way quicker workflow. If you're not using HardOps, bless you. That sounds absolutely terrible to work that way. But if you're not, going to go here to generate, and then you can add in a mirror that way and choose the axis. But I'm just going to press Alt X with HardOps. Going to mirror that way, and then I'm also going to mirror on that Y axis as well. Now we just need to get the shape once again so we can clean up any issues that are occurring a little bit later. I also want to scale this slightly on the Y. I'll do the same thing for the lattice here. I don't know if that matters too much. Just so we have like the rough shape more or less, okay? And I'm just going to shade this auto smooth, kind of see how this looks. This looks pretty close to the reference photo. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply that lattice, and then I can just delete the lattice. I don't need it anymore. I'll also apply the mirror for now. And I'm just gonna hold Alt and Shift and dissolve out these random mirror lines right here. Like that. Same for this side, and then same for this side over here. Now we have like the rough shape that we need. And just to kind of make my workflow a bit less tedious, I'm gonna delete out the top and the bottom caps here. X and then delete faces. And now what I wanna do, I could probably decimate this down a bit, so just so we have a lower resolution to begin with. I'm gonna try the decimate modifier. I'm gonna go to unsubdivide and do that twice. It's not gonna work very well. So instead what I'll do here, it's not really a big deal. I'm just gonna dissolve out every other edge here basically, just so we have a little bit of a lower resolution. I can dissolve out that bottom one. Actually, maybe I'll leave that for now. And now we just have a little bit of a lower resolution object, which is, you know, kind of what I want right here. Now what I want to do is I want to kind of rotate the top area of these edges. So I'm going to alt click on the top edges. I'm going to press F3 and then type in shear. I'm going to press the Y key to change the axis, and I'm just going to slightly shear in that direction. Just a little bit, not a huge angle. The reason I want to use shear is because in this case it might actually be okay, but sometimes it just gives you a bit of a better result. It'll kind of slide more naturally. So I'm just going to go with something basic like that. As long as you have the rough shape, it's fine. You could even use a boolean right there. It literally doesn't matter as long as you have that shape. And now we kind of have like the general, you know, setup that we're going for. I'm going to actually turn off cavity for this particular workflow because it can be a little bit weird to look at. And if I turn off cavity and shade this auto smooth, we don't have these weird kind of distortion lines. There's ways to fix that. You can adjust like the valley option, but doesn't really matter too much. I'm going to turn that off. Cool, so we have the rough shape here. Now the tricky part is actually creating the kind of curve that goes into it in this direction here. So the way I like to do this is just to use a simple inset boolean inside of HardOps. Inset booleans are normally very difficult to do in Blender compared to like a CAD software. But with HardOps, it's one click. So I'm going to actually fill these in because the mesh needs to be manifold or the inset boolean won't work. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I'm just going to go to the Ngon cutter here. Again, if you're not using HardOps, you could probably do this with like a cube manually, but I just don't see a point in doing that. I'm going to go ahead and press Alt V and just turn on the wireframe so I can kind of see the wireframe here. And I'm just going to kind of think about how I want to position this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click and then hold Control, and I'm just going to create like the rough kind of shape here. So the positioning doesn't matter too much right now. It will in a little bit, but for right now I just need to get the shape in. I'm going to double click, and then I'm going to press the I key to run an inset boolean. Now I don't want that harsh, you know, 45-degree angle there in the corner. I would show you, but kind of like up there. But I'm just going to press B to bevel, and it is a bit laggy. That's a Blender limitation, unfortunately. And we don't need a super high resolution. We literally need like 1 or 2 segments here. It's just kind of a matter of how is this going to match up with the surrounding geometry. I'm going to go for something like that. I think, let's click there and press enter. Now let me press Q and then go to ever scroll, and I just want to ever scroll one more time. For these bottom edges here, basically what HardOps does is it applies a limit bevel, or a weight bevel rather. So I'm just going to go in here. I don't want this bottom area to be beveled because you can see what it's doing. So what I can do is select these 2 edges here, press the N key, go to item, and then turn the mean bevel weight down to 0, and that'll fix that problem. I can hide that, and this should be okay. We're gonna have to do a bit of basic retopo, but it's really not a big deal. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna ever scroll one more time and press Q and then make this solidify even larger, because I want the transition here, if I can, to be even larger. So I'm gonna go to maybe about here. I think that'll work. And then I'm gonna press Q and then ever scroll on that one, because this is basically like a double boolean. And I'm just gonna kind of position this in maybe a different location. I think somewhere around there will be good. Could even move that in a bit. You can just kind of play around with this and see what you like, see what looks good in terms of the positioning. That looks okay to me for right now. Then I'll just go ahead and apply that. Alright, so the good news is this is still pretty low poly. We can always easily dissolve things out. The bad news is we have to do some manual adjustments here. And it's not really bad news, it's pretty easy. So you're going to see it's a mess. Don't worry about it, we're going to fix it. What I like to do is kind of start with the basic stuff. So for example, right here, I could dissolve this out. It doesn't really hurt the curvature too much. The sub D should take care of the rest. I'm going to dissolve that one out. This one right here is a little bit harder to do. I'd like to keep that one for the curvature because you can see where it starts to transition and curve, you need more edges to kind of maintain that curvature. So I'm going to try to keep that one. This one here, it looks like maybe I can dissolve that. And again, I don't want to dissolve that one if I can avoid it. First thing I'm going to do is dissolve this out right here. It's not going to really make a difference. And then I'm just going to select everything. I'm going to select this stray vertex. And I believe if I press Shift G and go to amount of connecting edges, it'll actually select all the other, what I call garbage vertices. We can dissolve those out with Control X. And you can already see this is a lot cleaner. And I can just go in here and start joining these up with the J key. Now this is symmetrical, so I only need to work on one side for right now. I'm gonna join that one up. Just gonna merge that. And again, I'm just going, one step at a time. I don't need to get, too picky right now. I'm gonna join that up and then dissolve this. Yeah, let's dissolve that and then just kind of merge that one up. And we're a little bit closer. Again, all I'm doing here is just doing piece by piece. Now, if you have Mesh Machine, you can actually do an Alt-X to run a quick symmetry. You can also just use a mirror modifier. And just to kind of make this easier for everybody watching, I'm just going to delete out this half here and just focus on this half for right now. I think it'll just be a little bit easier here. Actually, hang on a second. What the hell? Okay, I see what's going on. I need to just add an edge down here through the middle and through the top, so that way it's not deleting the random stuff. Then I'll just delete out those vertices, and there we go. Now we just have the half. We can literally just focus on the half. No stress, no issues. I can join that up. I'm gonna join that up. You can press Shift R to repeat the command. And we're already, a lot closer to where we need to be. Now this one right here, again, I'm going to keep that. Let me maybe merge this up to here. And we can kind of focus on the rest here ourselves. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to transition this up in this direction. So I'm going to run the knife cut to there and then to there. Transition in that direction. And then just kind of slide these over a bit. Just transition these a little bit more. I don't want to hurt the curvature too much here, but I can get away with a little bit. Because if I slide this like way too far, for example, you get a very obvious shading issue. Okay, we have an n-gon here in this area. We need to solve for that. So what I'm going to do is add in a loop here. And maybe, let me try dissolving that. Can I get away with it? I think I can. I'll kind of slide that up. And then I can join that into there, just for right now. All right, it looks pretty decent. I'm not complaining too much about this one. What I do want to do though is slide that down just a bit. Maybe do the same thing here. Slide that down just a bit. Now what I can actually do is I can go in and I can use something called the offset feature with Mesh Machine. What this will basically do, I don't think I can do it right now, so I'm going to have to actually mirror this and then apply that mirror for it to work. And what I can do now is I can select this area because it's a manifold now. I can go to offset and then I can actually just offset in that direction perfectly. And then I can do the same exact thing to, that inner portion. You know what, actually before I do that, what I'd like to do here is create a bevel. I think it'll look a bit more natural if I put like a single bevel in here. I could even do like 2 to be honest, and then just kind of scroll up like that. Kind of like that. I think that'll be okay. Might need to slide some of this down a bit. And don't worry about these edge markings. I can actually unmark those. They don't matter too much right now. And I'm not sure what happened here. Let me just fix that and then dissolve this out. Okay, we're already looking a lot better. We have that nice clean transition. You can kind of see the bottom here. Another issue. Let me just merge that. You're gonna have issues popping up like that. It's not really a big deal. Just get them fixed. Cool, so at this point, let me just run a quick test sub-D. So Control 1, Control 2, you can already see we have a very clean transition. And I'm gonna actually delete out these caps here on the bottom and on the top, just so that way when I run the sub-D, I'm not distracted. And you can see we have a pretty clean transition on this area just by adding in that bevel. Now in that reference photo, the transition starts pretty large here on the top, and then it transitions in until there's basically no transition down here anymore. That's going to be the hardest part about solving this area. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, let me think about this. Let me go in, let me slide these down a bit. It's kind of bothering me. Kind of like that. So what I think I'll do for this area is, okay, we need to transition this inwards. So I'm basically going to need to slide these areas in slowly but surely. It's going to be a strange transition, but that's kind of what's going on here. You can already see it looks better. I'm going to need to slide these in as well. And at some point, I'm going to have to terminate the transition as good as I can. So the tighter I get this, the cleaner the transition is going to be. And at some point here, like I said, I do need to terminate that transition somewhere around here. That's probably going to require a triangle, unfortunately. So your other option is to keep it, but I don't think that's how the reference photo actually looks. So here, I'm literally going to have to go in and get this all merged until it's kind of, you know, transitioned down. I might even need to go in here and kind of do something like that. And then go in here and then just do something like that. And I'm just trying to ease that transition in as best I can. I know it's not going to be the cleanest, but that's kind of a limitation of a polygon-based modeling software like this, unfortunately. Let me also take this area, scale this on the z-axis to 0. Maybe scale that in a bit. You can already see it looks pretty clean. It's a larger transition up here. And then it is a smaller one down here. Now this is a bit tight. What I'm going to do here is double tap G and then press the C key to move in that direction. I want this to be a clean linear transition if I can. Another thing you can do is you can use a tool called Mira Tools. So if I select this, Mira Tools is a free add-on, by the way. You don't need it, but you can actually use it. Go to Curve Stretch and it'll actually transition that nicely for you. You can kind of see the before and after. I don't know what happened there. Let me try again. Cool. Before, after, before, after. I love Mira Tools for this specific tool right here. Again, before, after, before, after. It's a cleaner transition. And then right here as well, curve stretch, and it didn't do too much right there. I can actually relax this area with loop tools. Maybe not. I'll just slide that down a bit. It's not really a big deal. And then I'm just going to join that area up right there. And you can see we have a very clean transition going on. And just by slightly adjusting these vertices here and kind of making it more clean and a more clean transition, that's how you're getting the clean shading here. That's very, you know, kind of tight and transitions nicely into this area onto the side. So like I said, you do need a triangle here, unfortunately. You could try an n-gon for that area. Sometimes it'll look better. So for example, here, I'll just turn off optimal display. Sometimes an n-gon will look a little bit better, but it kind of depends. So again, let's turn this on. That's before, and that's after. I think an n-gon here actually looks better in terms of that transition. So I might just go with that. There's really no easy way to transition nicely when, you know, you're using a polygon-based modeling software. There's honestly not too much you can do. You can try your best, but at the end of the day, CAD is probably going to perform something like this a little bit better, but it doesn't look terrible at all. And you can see the transition looks just fine to begin with. I wouldn't get too picky about it. And then what we can do is, you know, another option is I could actually keep the triangle here and put the n-gon here. That might actually be an even better solution. So again, let me just undo that. That looks like a potentially better solution here. You know, I could get picky with this all day trying to find, you know, what's the best solution here. And I'll probably never find one, but that looks pretty okay to me. So I'm just gonna stick with that maybe. And if you want to completely kill this transition here, you basically just have to merge that down and you could kill that whole transition. So again, we have 1, 2, 3. This looks okay. Let's go with something like that maybe. It kind of kills the transition pretty nicely down here compared to this side, you can see. So what I'll do is I'll just do a symmetry. Let me actually turn on the sub-D so you can see it. I think that looks cleaner. Look at the difference. It kind of transitions nicely and terminates. Now at this point, make sure you save your scene. Very important. If you don't save your scene, you might end up with a crash. And I'm not sure what's going on up here. Okay, if you're using Mesh Machine Symmetry, make sure when you use it, you turn off the remove redundant center, or it's going to remove that center there on the top. You want to keep those connected. All right, this is looking really clean. I can actually go into a different matte cap here. We can see this even better. That looks awesome. And that is basically how I would approach a shape like that. I mean, it's not that difficult. It depends on your experience level and just kind of a little bit of critical thinking, figuring out where to place the vertices, how to transition everything, you know, stuff like that. And then just to kind of cap this off, I can press the F key. I might even go here and go to Loop Tools and then Circle. And I could even try relaxing that instead. Just do something like that. And then I could actually go in, add in an isolation loop, and then inset this bottom area here. It's a little bit warped from that relax. So maybe instead of using relax, what I could use is maybe, let's try circle maybe. And I can turn on and off regular, on and off, we'll keep the flatten there. And then just maybe rotate the angle kind of to there. Let's try this again. Let's add in an isolation loop and then inset this bottom area here. It's a little bit distorted there on the bottom, so you know that's going to be something you have to decide. If I just fill this in as it is, you're not going to have that. So maybe I could do that. It's going to be a lot cleaner, and then I can inset this. And then I'll just delete these faces here, and I'll run a grid fill. It's a flat surface, so you don't need to get too picky here. But you could actually go in, you could add in a grid fill and kind of experiment that way. Could try like simple blending. This looks okay to me. And then for the top, we'll just go ahead and do the same thing. Fill that, Control R, drag this up, double tap G, and then I'll press E and then F to flip that so it's aligned. And then I'll inset this area, delete those faces, and then we'll just run a grid fill here as well. And that is how I would create a simple shape like this. This is, you know, probably as good as you're going to get. You can kind of see the topology here. It's not bad, looks clean, and I'll just go back to an optimal display. And there we go. We have a pretty clean shape here. I don't see any massive shading errors, and I think we did the transition here as good as we could in terms of a polygon-based modeling software. So that's it for today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. And again, if you want to learn our entire hard surface modeling workflow in under 2 weeks, like thousands of our students have done here, this is again a guarantee. Check out our Hard Surface Accelerator program in the link in the top of the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.